Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, April 24th. Today we're going to talk about these big elections, or the big election, I should say, in France. We're going to be chatting with our good friends Rosine and Michael, and we're going to talk about a lot of different angles to the story. The first thing I want to find out is, was this different in terms of turnout? You know, what are the exit polls are saying? What about the turnout across the country? I heard some things today on the radio that different sections of the country voted differently. So we'll hear that from our two guests tonight. We're also going to talk about the impact of all of this on Europe and the European Union, and I suppose on the United States as well, because, I mean, something like this is obviously going to have an impact on the United States. And we're also going to learn a little bit more tonight about the opposition, Emmanuel Macron, who is 39 years old, as I understand, and he's running for president for the first time. There's already, in fact, I have a post about this. I have a post about this on Tuesday where everybody's comparing everybody to Kennedy these days. And I'm thinking to myself, Kennedy was not a left-of-center socialist like this guy is. So it's interesting. I guess they want to compare everybody to Kennedy, maybe because he's young. Maybe that's the issue. But bottom line, this is going to be a very interesting election. And let's say hello to our friends Rosine and Michael. Rosine, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you doing? Good evening.
Just great. Now, Rosine, you were in France recently. So,
yes.
You know, when were you there?
I was there last week. I was there last week for over 2 weeks. Yes.
And so you were there for the, I guess, all of the pre-election, right?
Yeah, well, yes, part of it. But I was there to participate in a colloque between some people of the Middle East and Russia about relationship between America and Russia. How is it going to affect the European countries?
Okay.
But we did also talk a lot about the election.
We'll get back to you on that topic in a minute. I just want to say hello to Michael. Otherwise, Michael is going to think that we're not paying attention to him. Hey, Michael, how are you?
I'm doing great, Sylvia. Hello, Rosine.
Hello, Michael. How are you?
Good.
All right. Let's do this because I'm fascinated by the fact that you were there in Paris a couple of weeks ago, Rosine. Tell me, you were there then, or were you there during the last terrorist act?
No, I just came back the day before. But, I mean, the place where it happens, it's usually a place where we used to have some meetings not too far from, the Arc of Triomphe. And this is really something that should have never happened in Paris. Have a policeman shot right there in the middle of what we call the best avenue in the world, that used to be the safest. We can have shopping, fun, eating, drinking. It's over now. People are walking fast. People are looking around. It's terrible.
Right. Exactly. Before we get to some of the questions I have for you, I'm curious, Michael. This one's for you. How do you follow what is happening in France? You're in the United States, so are there any favorite sources that you have, or do you speak with friends? How do you stay in touch with what's happening? Not so much the election results, because obviously all of us can see that, but I'm talking about some of the inner workings of what's happening in the country and all of that. How do you stay in touch with France, Michael?
I stay in touch, and I learn about the situation and what's going on through friends who are involved in politics in France. Some of them are friends of Rosine as well. And I think that's a very nice way of learning what's going on, and as you mentioned, the inner workings. And you get a little bit of a preview of what's really going on, and that the media sometimes ignores or chooses not to report.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because even here, I mean, and I don't follow it as closely as you both do, and that's why we have you on the show tonight. But even here, you know, we get this explanation, for example, of Le Pen, and we're told that she's anti-immigrant. I don't think that's really what she is, and yet that's how, you know, her party is presented. And then on the other hand, this other gentleman, Macron, and we'll talk more about him later, he's kind of presented as this idealist, you know, when in fact he's very much of a socialist. So we'll talk about that in a second. Before we do, I know you've been on the show before many times, but we probably do have some new listeners, and I just want them to know a little bit about you. So, Rosine, tell us about what you're doing now and some of your current projects.
What I'm doing now, I'm very involved in international politics. I moved from the Tea Party to the Republican Party on the state level, to the national level, to the international level, because I think it's in my duty to be involved in overseas. So that's what I'm doing now, presenting conservative views and also trying to defend what used to be the culture and what used to be France. Also,
exactly.
You know, yes, I do. It's very important because we are losing a war over there.
Well, you're right about that. We're losing identity. That is for sure.
Yeah.
Michael, what are you up to these days?
Well, I'm involved again also in international sphere, more in the aspect of international business, but I am an avid follower of international affairs and politics, just like Rosine. I am an American by choice, like all of us actually today in the program. We're Americans by choice, and I just have a passion for foreign affairs, and I have a very keen interest because I am a harsh critic of the European Union, and certainly this election will have an impact on what the future is going to be of this multinational organization.
That's right. Well, very good. Thanks to both of you for updating me on what you're up to. Well, let's begin with the turnout and what some of the exit polls are saying and what exactly the election told you. I think as it turned out, Mr. Macron got 22 and Ms. Le Pen got 21, but they're both going to another round, so I guess that's the way it is. But Rosine, what can you tell me about the turnout? For example, was it heavy, the turnout in different parts of the country? Was it different, let's say, than Paris? So tell me as much as you can about the turnout.
The turnout, if you speak about France, the country was lower than the last election. But in some part of the country, it was much, much higher. I think Marine Le Pen got 1 million votes more than the last time. If you look at the map of the country, we do have a heavy turnout in the east part, and it's lower in the west part. The south is normal. It's usually what we get, 60%, something like that, of turnout. But the region, Bordeaux region, and all that was a little lower. And for sure, it was on the left. The left, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
But what does that tell you, Rosine? I mean, what conclusion?
Well, that tells me that, let me tell you, Silvio, I was shocked because I saw that after the policeman killed in Champs-Élysées, people will go to vote. But there is not an increase in voting. There is, it was a little less than last time. It looks like people, I don't know what's going on. I really don't know. French people are giving up, or they just wait for the second round. Some of them just wait for the second round because they don't feel like there were 11 candidates. So, they don't feel to say, okay, let's see what's going to happen for the second round. That's all. That's all I can say. But I was shocked.
But
I'm shocked.
Yeah. So you were expecting a heavier turnout.
Yes, I was expecting a heavier turnout, and I was expecting a lot more votes for Marine. I was expecting Marine to have a highest percentage. But some of the people went to Mélenchon, the left guy, and some went to Fillon. You know, it's a matter that it was shared between too many candidates.
Right. Michael, what does it say to you that the turnout was low? I mean, were you surprised to hear that? Were there? I heard somebody today, for example, Rush Limbaugh today said something very interesting, and I have no way of proving this, so I just give it to you at face value. But Rush Limbaugh said today that if France had had an electoral college, Le Pen would have won the election because of the way the vote was. So, Michael, what does that say to you? Or the turnout, I mean.
Something that was actually very interesting is that both Marie Le Pen and Mélenchon, which is the hard left candidate who finished fourth in the election, they won the youth vote overwhelmingly. And as Rosine mentioned, right now geographically, while we call here in America red states versus blue states, Marine Le Pen, she won, the heart and soul of the country. She won everything that's basically half moon, like a crescent. She won everything that's north, east, the east and the southeast, and she won areas that are very dependent on farming and areas that have been having hit the hardest in terms of economics. And I think a lot of people are fed up. As Rosina was surprised that Marine Le Pen didn't win the first round. I was convinced that she was going to get anywhere between 23 and 27% of the vote at least. I was surprised by the surge that Mr. Macron enjoyed, and I believe that he's just being propped up by the elites, because he's someone who is now pretending to be a centrist, but who belonged to the Socialist Party as an official member between 2006 and 2009, and of course he belonged to the government of the disgraced socialist president François Hollande, who is the first president ever in the history of the Fifth Republic who has decided not to run for a second term, and who had wounded his party in a way in which no other person has ever done it. The socialist candidate, the candidate of the Socialist Party, rather, because there were many socialist candidates, including Mr. Macron, but the official candidate of the Socialist Party this time around only got 6% of the vote. So it's very interesting. A lot of people are talking about, this is a seismic change in the French politics. French politics are never going to be the same. Well, in my view, that's not quite the truth, because first of all, this is not the first time the Front National, the National Front, makes it to the second round of the election, the presidential election. In fact, this happened in 2002 when Jean-Marie Le Pen, founder of the Front National and father of Madame Le Pen, he ran against Jacques Chirac in the second round of elections. And because the fact that Mr. Macron, he's not really an independent, as just mentioned, he's just a socialist who decided to leave the boat when it was started to sink.
Right. So he's actually, how do you say it? Macron? Am I saying it correctly? Macron? Yeah.
Macron,
yeah. So he's actually a socialist who sort of left the Socialist Party to run kind of as an independent, sort of like that, right? He's not really, he's a socialist in spirit, but he's not officially a member of the party or had left the party. I guess that's what you're saying, right, Michael?
Yeah, that's correct. In recent weeks, he and his campaign have identified him as a follower of the Third Way. I don't know if you remember the Third Way of Tony Blair, of
Yes.
the former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, and we know that he spoke with former President Barack Obama, and he is also a supporter of Merkel, Chancellor Merkel, even though she's not officially a socialist. In fact, she's a member of the center-right party CSU, but he represents this kind of mainstream European Union kind of politics, and so he's trying to be everything and everyone for everybody. That's
right.
the sense that
and
I have about this guy.
Sure, and as I have a post, as I said, tomorrow morning, hopefully it'll be out, where I say that he's being the first thing they did was to compare him to Kennedy. Yet all of these European news media reports saying the new French Kennedy and all of that kind of stuff, which I thought was a bit silly.
I will compare him to Obama, and I will compare him to Obama because, for instance, Mr. Macron, when he was giving an interview to a radio station in Algeria, he apologized for the French colonization of Algeria, and actually that costed him a couple of points, in the polls prior to the election. So he's like Obama. He apologizes for everything that his country has done.
Right. Yeah, he's clearly coming from the left of the party. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a little break, and then when we come back from the break in our next segment, I want to talk about a couple of other things about the election. I want to talk about the two candidates who are going to the runoff, and talk a little bit also about the impact of all of this, or the impact that it could have on the European Union. We'll be right back. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Let's continue our chat with Rosine and with Michael about the election. In the first segment, we learned something very interesting, and that is that the turnout had been rather low. And I would have expected, frankly, the turnout to be extremely high given the intensity of the election. But I guess, Rosine, if I could come back to you for a minute on this question of turnout, and then we'll talk about other things. I would have expected that the turnout was going to be rather high because of what I just said, because of the expectations, because of all the talk about the big change, and obviously the candidacy of Ms. Le Pen, who is obviously the kind of person who creates passion on both sides of the fence. So do you think that there's a certain level of apathy or resignation on the part of the French people, Rosine?
I think so. I think they are just giving up. And I talked to a few people around after the election. It's like they were shocked too. There is nothing you can say. Because what you said about Macron, well, you call him a Kennedy. I don't call him a Kennedy. He's an Obama boy. That's what he is. And he's part of that mondialization stuff. He's really from the left. And President Hollande, it's a trick. It was a trick. Hollande knew that if he was not going to be reelected anyway, so he could not run again. So they manufacture that little puppet of Macron, a little left that goes in the center, that is supported by a big money. He's a banker, he's supported by big business, big money, and he's from the left. And he's a candidate of Hollande and the mondialization. And the French were really what we call in France rolled in the flour. They did not even see it coming. The guy is 39 years old. He goes out and say, I make a new party. He make a new party all of a sudden and get 20%. No, it's not a new party. It's a socialist disguised in something else. He is not from the center. And now what do you have in the U.S. too? In the U.S. media you have saying Macron is from the center and Madame Le Pen is from the far right. Both are not true. Macron is not from the center. Macron is a leftist, and Madame Le Pen is not far right. She's just right. That's a big difference. Yeah.
Right. No, it's very interesting that you're clarifying that, because clearly the coverage that we're getting is of almost like this centrist person, Macron, versus the smart right-winger Le Pen, and it is, as you say, completely unfair. Now, I want to ask Michael a question because I want to, for just a bit longer, talk about this low turnout. Michael, this is, of all the things that Rosine said tonight, this is the one that, frankly, I was not expecting, because I thought with all the passion in France, all the expectations, all the feelings, that there would have been a very high turnout, not necessarily for these two, but in general, that is, of people turning out. So does that kind of tell you that a lot of French people are just throwing in the towel, as they like to say, and say our country's gone, our country's lost? What does it say to you, Michael?
It is quite possible, to be honest. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking with a lot of friends of mine who are involved in politics here in the U.S., and they had really high expectations about the role of Mrs. Le Pen. And when the polls came in saying that she was in first place, I believe she was 3 or 4 points ahead of Macron. Everybody say it's over, she's going to win, she's going to be the president, and I proceeded to correct them, and I said, well, it's quite possible, and in fact, I believe that she's going to win the first round, but it's going to be very, very tough for her to win the second round, because the way it works is everybody, is going to gang up against her and not let her win. A lot of people told me, "Oh, this is nonsense." If let's say Mélenchon gets into the second round and it's Mélenchon, who is the hard left / communist candidate, and Mr. Le Pen, there is no way Fillon and everybody else is going to endorse him. Everybody's going to go for Le Pen, and they don't seem to understand French politics. I think that's quite possible that a lot of people say, okay, Marine, she's going to in fact make it to the second round, but we know beforehand she's not going to win because everybody's going to go against her, because it's this kind of eternal theme in French politics that the Front National, the racists, the xenophobes, the neo-Nazis, etc., we cannot let them win. And that's pretty much what happened last night when I was watching the results on television. All these candidates, one after the other, except Mélenchon, interestingly enough, came and endorsed Macron, not because of they like him, but because they say we cannot let Marine Le Pen win. For instance, Mr. Fillon, who is the conservative of the center right and who the candidate of the center right who ended up being third, he said pretty much that his vote was anti-Front National more than pro Macron. So it is quite possible that people just say, listen, I know we're going to win first, but it's, the way the system is rigged. It is rigged in the sense that all the news 24/7 in France, let alone overseas, are against Marine Le Pen, and the political system in terms of departments and local races is, again, rigged against the Front National. I think a lot of people just gave up, and I have said it. I've said it for a long time, except for some sort of divine intervention or miracle. In my view, Europe is long gone, and that was one of the reasons why I supported Trump in this country, because America is against that light,
right.
that of salvation in the distant, stormy sea, and I think that the reality of demography are going to hit us hard in the next decade or so. Right now, the balance it's tilting toward the Muslim invasion that has happened in Europe, especially in France, over the past 3-4 decades. But a lot of people right now are in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Unfortunately, they're not going to be around 10, 15 years from now, and then we're going to see that big sea of change in France, and it's very sad. It's very sad that people are choosing to vote based on political correctness, and they see Mr. Macron as a moderate, someone he's not an extremist. That's what we need. We need someone who's going to bring us together, etc., etc., etc. Well, reality is not about being nice and getting along with people. There are inherent risks that are very present. We just had, a terrorist attack in France. We have had, I don't know how many terrorist attacks in Europe over the past month. To be honest, I thought that those were going actually to help Madame Le Pen, but I'm still flabbergasted about what happened in the elections.
Let me move on. Let me ask Rosine a question, because she said something very interesting. She said, if I understood you correctly, Rosine, you said that you thought people didn't vote in the first round, and then they'll come and vote in the second round. Can you do that? Can you vote in the second round if you didn't vote in the first round? Okay, all right.
Yes, you can.
So the electorate in the second round is going to be made up of people who didn't vote the first time around. I'm not saying all of it.
No, it's about 27%.
So about one out of every three.
About 27% that did not vote.
So let's say 3 out of 10 voters did not vote, and they have now an opportunity to come back and vote for the second round. Now, who do you think that would favor, or can we even make that assessment?
I think we are going to have maybe a big surprise, and I agree with Michael when he said it was always the same thing. Everybody at the second round was ganging up against the Front National. But what we have seen in the past 2 days, we have seen an explosion of the right. There is no more right in France, because people that were backing Fillon are divided in two parts. Some are not going to vote for Macron. Some are going to go to Le Pen. Same thing with the left. Socialism, they all, no, they don't. If you listen to what Mélenchon said, Mélenchon is closer in one way from Marine Le Pen. Mélenchon is against mondialization. Mélenchon is against more Islamic and immigration in the country. So there is some common gaps between Mélenchon and Marine Le Pen that you don't have with Macron. So plus you have those 27 to 29% people that did not vote, and they are waiting to vote. Depending on what's going to happen during those 2 weeks, we are going to have a debate, and that debate is going to be very, very important, because Marine Le Pen is very good at debating, and what she is going to talk about, I don't think Macron will be able to survive a debate. That's my feeling, but I'm not sure.
Interesting.
I'm not sure that you never know with the French anymore. You never know,
but because especially you don't know, especially with that many people who will have an opportunity to vote who didn't vote the first time. That's a big wild card that could go either way. We just don't know. Now, let me ask both of you a question, and I'll ask each one of you the same question but a different way. What would be the impact, let's say, of the election on Europe, the EU, if, let's say, Ms. Le Pen won? And what would be the impact on Europe and the EU if Mr. Macron won? So, Michael, why don't you take the one about Macron? What do you think would be the impact on Europe and the EU and perhaps even the United States if Mr. Macron won the election?
If Mr. Macron wins, which unfortunately I think is going to be the case, even though I'm rooting for Madame Le Pen, but I'm just very realistic about the onslaught of attacks from the media and the establishment that we're going to see in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think the EU establishment and the globalists are going to feel emboldened, that they are going to be more arrogant toward the UK and the process of the Brexit. I think that the media is going to run and say that, finally, we have another representative and another leader of the free world who is going to oppose Mr. Trump. We have the anti-Trump in Mr. Macron. And I think they're going to compare him, and rightly so, to Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau, who is all looks and no brains. And unfortunately, I think that's what's going to happen.
All right.
The EU.
Now let's go.
The EU. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
I would say the EU. Yes, it might survive one or two more decades, but it's like a patient who has a terminal illness, and yes, it's gonna bide on time. But I think that the end of the EU is gonna happen within our lifetimes.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. In fact, I agree with you on that point. Rosine, what is the same question, but Marine Le Pen wins the election? What do you think happens to France? What do you think happens to Europe and the European Union? What can you see happening there?
If Marine Le Pen wins, I think it will be kind of a domino effect in Europe because France always have, a very big influence. So it will help us. It will help the U.S. Let me tell you why. Because Marine Le Pen, she will stop immigration. She will stop mondialization. She will try to remodel France, to go back to the original culture. So that's exactly what Donald Trump is trying to do in the U.S. So we will have a friend in Marine Le Pen. In America, we will have a friend, and this friend will take a bigger role in Europe, which might wake up other European countries. So
yeah, it's interesting.
We are, but you have to understand also that Macron is not only anti-Trump, he's also anti-Putin. So if Macron takes France, we will have enemies in Europe because Macron
very interesting.
will do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, very interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead and finish, Rosine.
It's just that what's going to happen. Europe is going to be taken between Russia and America because so far America with Donald Trump is America first, and it's sovereignty and it's anti-mondialization. So is Russia. Vladimir Putin is the same way. So Europe will feel like squeezed and might have to change direction, but I'm not sure of that. We might have to fight, and I will not be surprised if we have some blood in the street. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let me tell you what I think. I'd like to conclude with what I think could happen. First of all, I think Michael is right. I mean, we've talked about this many times that Europe is in very serious trouble. I sometimes, Michael, you've heard me say this, I refer to Europe as the ghost of Christmas future, in that movie, where you could look in the future and see what the future you're headed to. You don't have to go there. You can change. But I think in many ways, Europe looks that way to me as a continent that has a lot of problems. I think they have three structural problems, and I don't think Macron or anybody from the left is dealing with them. That's the first one is the baby problem, the question of demographics. Then you have the welfare state, and then you have, of course, this craziness with immigration. I don't think Macron is dealing with any of that. If he were to be elected, within 6 to 9 months, I think he'll be highly unpopular, and because he cannot deal with these three serious problems facing the country. I think at least Le Pen is talking about one of those three problems, perhaps two of them, with the welfare state, because it's somewhat related to immigration. And I think that she, in my opinion, if I was a French citizen, I would see a little bit more hope in her victory, because at least she's attacking one or two of the structural problems in the country. So that's how I see it. But if Macron wins, I just see France declining more and more. And I hate to say it, Rosine, but you may be right when you indicated that there may be blood in the streets, because people you could see the tension and the problems in Europe. Anything else, Michael, that you wanted to add?
I just hope that, for the sake of Europe and the world and everybody, that, Madame Le Pen wins. However, I'm not being pessimistic, I'm just being realistic. I think that it's going to be a very, very tall order, because if we think that, that Trump had a very own level, set against him in this past election, in France, is 10 to 100 times worse. I think that they're going to play the media is going to play the fear factor card, in which like, oh, we cannot allow these Nazis to get into office, and they're gonna take all the tapes from Jean-Marie Le Pen and the past, and they're gonna throw these kind of fear factor scenarios. I think that it would be a miracle if Marine Le Pen wins, and I will pray for it. I know that, as Rosine mentioned, I mean, there are sections of the population, that the people who voted for Mélenchon, who is kind of like the Bernie Sanders of France.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them I know are going to vote for Marine Le Pen. Many people on the right are going to vote for Marine Le Pen. The question that remains is, are French people going to fall for the same lie of like doom and gloom if Marine Le Pen wins, or they are actually going to choose and save their nation from the onslaught of Islamic immigration?
I guess we're going to know in a couple of weeks, Rosine. When is the election?
Yes.
What day is it? What day is it, Rosine, the election?
We have the second round in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, okay.
2 weeks.
I'll tell you what.
Sorry.
All right, well, let's do this. Let's try to get together a couple of days before the election and just kind of take stock of what's going on and do another show and just to get a sense, because a lot of things I think could change in the next 2 weeks. You said there was a debate.
Yes.
No, it can, and we saw in England and we saw in the United States that the pollsters turned out to be wrong. So I don't necessarily put all my stock on. I mean, I'm not trying to split the baby, as they say. I think Michael is right. I think the odds are against Miss Le Pen, but you never know. I honestly thought the odds were against Mr. Trump winning, and he won. So you never know. You never know what. But thank you so much to both of you for joining me tonight, and thank you for your input tonight, guys. Very great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And if you're listening in France or wherever you may be, well, thank you for your support. I know that Rosine always puts the show on Facebook and stuff like that. So hopefully you're listening to us in France. If you are, we thank you for your support, and we wish everybody a very happy election day. We hope that it all works out well for France. Good night, Rosine. Good night, Michael, and we'll talk to you soon.
Good night, Good night, Michael.
All right. I think we lost Michael, but I think he's gone. Okay, very good. Good night, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas.